Today I fucked up by possibly ruining my career from a dating scam. Today I fucked up by possibly ruining my career from a dating scam. Hello Reddit. I have never posted before, so sorry if I do not write to proper Reddit standards. I, 25 male, am currently a student in my last year of university. I will not say where and what field I am going into. For some more background info, I am not very good with relationships. I have dated a few girls, but realistically I have only had one real relationship which only lasted around 1 year and ended almost 2 years ago. That relationship was incredibly toxic as my partner did some nasty things to hurt me. I am by no means the perfect partner. I messed up too, but she did some really harmful things that have kinda had me scared to get back not only into dating but talking to people in general. Recently, my friends have wanted to see me try dating apps just to test the field, as they say. I have been on both Tinder and Bumble for the past few months with mixed success. I match with a girl, we talk for a bit and usually one of us just ghosts the other. I was never a big fan of dating apps, so I was mainly using this experience as a way to talk to people. I know. A sad and lonely life. I am in no rush to get into any relationship, as I am pretty happy being single. I have a great group of friends both on campus at school and online who I play games with. My school life is super busy with all the assignments and readings, along with an internship. Since I am so swamped, I have no idea why I just did what I just did, redundant. So earlier today I matched with this girl, 23 female, on Bumble and we started talking. Really basic stuff. She then asked to video call right away, so I complied. I was surprised by her boldness, but I like people who take initiative. We follow each other on Instagram and she video calls me. She then hung up and asked if we could talk on another app, WhatsApp. I saw no issue but found it strange to switch apps, but I went along with it. We continue talking and she pitches doing some exciting things. Now, I know what everyone out there is thinking. This is a total scam. How did you fall for it? That's what I am also asking myself. On video call, she proceeds to strip nude and start pleasuring herself. I'll be honest, it was quite erotic. Normally, a guy like me does not do stuff like this. Maybe the desperate loser in me came out and was surprised a girl was doing this stuff for me. She then asked me to do the same. And this is where my naivety kicks in. In my mind, if she was willing to do this with complete trust in me not to screenshot, then she wouldn't do the same, right? Wrong. The instant I pull down my pants, she hangs up. She then sends me a screen-recorded video of my face and me pulling down my pants and revealing my penis. She then proceeded to threaten me, saying she has my info and to give her more unless I wanted the video sent to all my friends and family who follow me on Instagram. She sends more screenshots of her threatening to send the video to everybody. At this point, I finally realized I messed up and started having an anxiety attack. I run upstairs to my parents. I'm staying over for the weekend. I have my own place, who are sleeping. This is at 2 in the morning. I tell them what happened through lots of my own screaming and tears, saying, my career is over, the career path I am going into is quite coveted in my area, and a video like this getting out would hurt. My parents, being the saints they are, tell me to calm down. My dad requests to see my phone and looks over our DMS. My dad used to work in deducing scams and explained that nothing would really come of it. While he was doing that, she started counting down in DMS from 10, saying she will expose me. My dad says there is nothing left to do, but just block her. My parents then spent the next 10 minutes calming me down and reassuring me. My dad advised me that tomorrow morning, to send out a message to everyone saying my iCloud was hacked. That seems like a plausible solution as my ex and I would send each other videos, we were long distance. Alternatively, my mother suggested to deny that the video was real, and that it was AI generated or deep faked. And that's where I am at now. What do? I am so frustrated with myself that I fell for something like that. While I am no Einstein, I consider myself to be semi-competent. I can't even explain why I did what I did in the moment. Perhaps I really am not content right now with being single. My friends and family know that the stress of school is getting to me. But I did not think it would drive me for some momentary pleasure like this. So good people of Reddit, what should I do next? Should I just try to ignore it, or address it? Will this really come back to bite me? And #X200B. Too long did not read. I was horny and stressed, exposed myself to a Bumble match, now getting threats that she will send the video to all my friends and family. The solution of your father seems plausible and believable. Don't worry, people will forget fast. But more important, you learned a valuable lesson in life that nothing on earth is free. This is so remarkably common a scam. The only guarantee is that if you pay, they will ask for more money. Don't pay. Block, report and move on with your life. Your parents sound awesome, op. I'm so glad you were able to go talk to your parents at 2 a.m. and have their support. What a great relationship you have with your parents. Testament to how they raised you with how safe you felt going to them. Stop communicating and block everything. You'll be fine. Today I fucked up by not recording the final moments of 7WTC. Sorry. Not today, but rather 22 years and 1 day ago. I was a volunteer firefighter in the northeast part of the USA when the airplane struck the Twin Towers. Never in my life had I felt something so gut-wrenchingly horrifying and sad as what I, and the rest of the world, was witnessing. I didn't know how I could help. I just knew that I needed to head toward NYC and offer my assistance. Feeling my firefighter training might be put to use, I packed up as much gear and supplies as my car could handle and headed to NYC. When I arrived at the Holland Tunnel, I found it barricaded by a huge water truck. A policeman waiting near to it saw my gear and radioed for the truck to move. The truck pulled forward, exposing the tunnel's entrance. I steered into the tunnel and drove through it completely alone. The only car in entire length of the Holland Tunnel to the other side. Another truck barricaded the exit on the city side. After a brief discussion with a policeman there, the truck slowly cleared the way. The police that day were amazing. I asked where I could park and an officer literally guided me to the front of the 1st Precinct station and said I could stage my car there as long as I wanted. I unpacked some of my gear there and started walking toward where the Twin Towers had once stood. Another officer stopped me before I got too close and warned me about the carnage that I would soon see if I continued. Horrid stuff that he feared I wouldn't ever forget. As I wandered toward the debris field where the Twin Towers once stood, I noticed that there were loads of FDNY firefighters waiting in the wings. Waiting for instructions. But that hundreds of them simply didn't have anything to do. The damage had been done. Most of the people who could be saved already had been. The situation had shifted from rescue to recovery. But what was left to recover was trapped under thousands of tons of collapsed steel and concrete. It was clear that my presence simply wasn't necessary, so I chose to return my gear to the car and grabbed a small video camera I had packed. I left the car and headed back to Ground Zero to document some of the scenes in and around where Towers 1 and 2 once stood. The streets were covered in a layer of light gray ash. Entire parking lots of cars had been destroyed by fire. The glamorous Palm Court was now a mess of shattered glass, debris and dust. The scenes were otherworldly. Within an hour or two I found myself standing about 5 or 6 city blocks from 7 World Trade Center. I stood and watched as 2 or 3 of the lower floors burned, completely engulfed in flames. I pulled out my camera, pointed it at the building, and recorded the flames. At some point I stopped recording and turned to walk away, but at that very moment the building began emitting loud snaps and pops. Turning around I saw glass panes at the top of the tower starting to crack and tumble to the ground. I pulled the camera up again and pressed its record button just in time to capture the entire structure as it crashed to the ground. A huge cloud of dust and debris started flying my way from a few hundred yards. Seeing that I was about to be covered in a cloud of toxicity, I stopped the recording, sprinted away, and found safety inside the cab of a parked FDNY ladder truck. Later in the evening, when I finally had a moment to review my recording, I realized my foo. Apparently when recording the burning building I never pressed the button that would stop recording. Moments later when I raised the camera and pressed the button to record the last moments of 7 World Trade Center, I actually stopped the recording. And when I hit the button again before sprinting away from the debris, I started recording again. When I reviewed my footage later I found that I had recorded the moments immediately before the collapse, and then later my sprint to safety. Nothing in between, the tower collapsing to the ground, had been captured. I will take that foo to my grave. Too long did not read. Thought I had started recording when I actually stopped recording, and subsequently failed to document an incredibly important moment in American history. Edit. For those who think I'm karma farming, all I can do is offer some screenshots from the video I shot that day. Not sure if it will satisfy, but it's the best I can do. Palm Court. 7WTC burning, Ground Zero. Thanks for not diverting into conspiracy theories. My father was there, and still now swears against what I remember him telling me in plain words 20 years ago, and it's because someone convinced him out of his own memory. I guess I always thought that it was only the Twin Towers that fell. So there was a third building that was destroyed at the World Trade Center? I guess that makes sense, with two of the largest towers in the world collapsing. I'm surprised the entire block wasn't destroyed. Thank you for being there to help that day. Thanks for going to help, recognizing when your services weren't needed and at least getting some footage. A lot of people, myself included, were in such shock we didn't know what to do. Wow, what a heartfelt and intense story. Your bravery and dedication as a volunteer firefighter during such a tragic event is truly inspiring. It must have been devastating to realize that you missed recording the final moments of 7WTC, but your courage and willingness to help during that time is what truly matters. The Holland Tunnel always creeped me out. Today I fucked up by ignoring all the warnings. This all started in late January of last year. I, 15 now 14 then, noticed the lymph node in my right armpit was swollen. I got worried about this and went to the nurse at my school as I was at a boarding school at the time. They said it was natural and told me I was fine and nothing was wrong, so I went with that. Over time though, it didn't go away. In February I felt discomfort in my left shoulder that got slightly worse in March, so I ended up going to the hospital to get it checked out in April, and they told me to come back if it got worse, but that it looked fine for now. Once school was out I ignored it until June when I, once again, asked to go to the hospital because my left shoulder was getting worse. This time I was going to my primary care doctor instead. When I explained it to her, she brushed it off as my body just growing weirdly and that it'd recorrect itself. It didn't. It got worse. In July I went to have my normal checkup, and brought it up again that it was getting worse. My doctor, again, said it was nothing to worry about. At this point I thought I was just freaking out over nothing and that my shoulder was just growing weirdly, but it kept getting worse. Nothing happened until November when I went in to get an X-ray done to see if anything was in there. They saw nothing. Now I believed I was just going crazy, that it had to be all in my head, and that was only reinforced when I stopped feeling my shoulder getting worse. I went through the whole of this year fine. I didn't have any problems and I wasn't worried about my shoulder anymore. Until a week after I went to get my annual checkup in late July of this year. I felt more discomfort in my shoulder for the first time in months, and when I touched it, I realized it felt like it was bulging. I then touched the side of my neck and felt that bulging too. I started to freak out but didn't say anything, and I promised myself I would say something if it got any worse. It got worse. I started having problems in my left elbow, knee, hip and the left half of my stomach. I told my mom about this, but because she lives away from where my primary care doctor is, my parents are divorced and live 3 hours apart, I couldn't go until I had been sorted out with a new doctor. I also had an unrelated athletic problem with the same shoulder and had to go to the emergency room to get another X-ray on the same shoulder less than a week ago. That leads me to now, where my stomach barely works. I have a lump in my neck right under my Adam's apple. All of my left body is very noticeably weaker than my right, and now I'm having neurological problems like trouble reading and writing, confusion, memory problems and issues with eyesight. At this point there's only one thing this could be: cancer. It would explain everything. I've been sitting with these thoughts for over a month now and it's been really fucking me up. I feel like I can't live anymore, and it doesn't help that I had to move and go to a whole new school as well. I never could have even fathomed this would happen, and I just feel so hopeless now with the thought of a slow and painful death in front of me. I wish the doctors took it more seriously. I wish that my living situation could have been better so I could get the help when I needed it, but I feel like it's too late. I know this could come off as me just being a teen who's overthinking and overreacting about nothing, but with how my body has been feeling, I can't help but be certain that this is cancer. All I can hope for is that I live to see a doctor again and that they tell me that it's nothing. I really fucking hope it is. TLR problems in my shoulder got worse while my doctors and myself ignored it, and now I'm starting to think it's cancer. Edit. Just to clarify, my family hasn't been negligent or anything like that. It's been my doctors telling me that everything is fine and we've been going off of that. Thank you for all the kind comments. Also, I spoke with my mom and we're trying everything we can to get me to my primary care. My dad went away on a 2.5-week-long trip to the Alps, and we know he would flip his shit if I went to his house without him there. Correction. Today I experienced medical malpractice and now have a lawsuit to file. Fam, what do you mean? Today I fucked up ignoring all the warnings. You're the only one who's not ignoring any warnings at all. Everyone else isn't taking you seriously. Hope this gets sorted out. Get well soon. Starting to think it's cancer. Yeah. Maybe see an oncologist, or just directly ask your doctor to test for lymphoma before you declare this a fuck-up and start spiraling. This is coming from a fellow hypochondriac more than twice your age who has had swollen lymph nodes from time to time since I was a teenager. You need to start at bloodwork. And go from there. If you have huge lymph nodes and neurological problems you are dying, go to the hospital and get a proper scan. Today I fucked up by following a hotel clerk into a room to check it out. I, 24 male, needed to post this to see if anyone else thought this was creepy. My job had me leave town for training, and they pay for lodging while you're gone. I wanted to get a nicer room, and so I asked my boss if I could get the nicer room and pay the difference between the single queen room and the king suite. He said I was fine to just get the nicer room, but I was still worried about submitting my expenses report with a huge hotel cost, so I looked for the cheapest suite I could find, called, and made a reservation. Advice: don't look for the cheapest suite you can find. So it was a reputable-looking chain hotel. The room had a jacuzzi, a king-size bed, and a kitchen. It was like $100 a night, and no deposit. When I arrived it was late at night. There were a couple people lounging in the lobby and it reeked of weed. This didn't honestly bother me, as I've been comfortable in much sketchier places. The man at the front desk was noticeably sweaty, and had moderate beau. I gave him my ID and he made a photocopy. I did some paperwork and then it came time to pay. Long story short, I was paying with mostly cash. So I pulled out a few hundred in cash and suddenly the clerk looked really unsettled. I didn't even think about the fact I'd pulled out cash, and I just assumed he was annoyed he'd have to deal with doing two payment types, but then he asked if before I paid, I wanted to see the room first. Stupidly, I agreed without a second thought. Until the sequence of events that just happened replayed in my head on the way to the room. I frantically texted my partner to call me so I could act like I needed to take a call. Luckily my partner called right away. The clerk stopped for a second and turned towards me with an annoyed look. I told her I'd call her when I got here, and she saw my phone location had arrived but I didn't call. He turned to keep going to the room, and I stayed on the phone. He kind of just walked in, and tried to get me off the phone so he could tour the room. I just held the phone to my chest and nodded. The next thing is what made me much more sure of his intentions. Finally he led me back to the front desk and I hung up. Back to the task of paying. I was pulling out my wallet and he said, "Sorry, I forgot to tell you. There is a $100 deposit. You could use your cash for that." At this point I apologized and said I don't think I will get the room then. As I was gathering my stuff he says, "How about a $50 deposit?" I just said no thank you and left. I found a queen bedroom available somewhere else. After looking back at the whole thing, I realized I had no clue what his plans were when he got me in that room alone. Maybe he thought I was going to hire services with my cash and wanted a bribe to keep quiet. Maybe he was going to rob me. But I saw his face and knew his place of work. And why did he look so unsettled as soon as I brought out the cash? And if touring the rooms was protocol, why didn't he ask me to do that before taking a copy of my license? I might be overthinking it, but I think if he was going to rob me, it was going to have to end in some violence because I knew so much about him already. I realize a lot of this story relies on body language that cannot be conveyed here, but he really did have a strong shift of demeanor leading up to showing the room. Too long did not read. Clerk saw my cash, tried to tour the hotel room to me, but I got my partner to interrupt the encounter with a phone call before leaving. Edit. So it seems the vast majority of people think it was sketchy, but not dangerous. Most likely the clerk was gonna ask for some sort of hush money or offer me under the table services. That's all I was curious about, so I appreciate the input. I didn't really know what to think of this, I just knew that some of that stuff was out of the ordinary. Also, be nice lol. I didn't hurt anyone, and I didn't identify anyone. I just wanted to know if my experience was actually sketchy. I didn't ever make a statement that it was. I started the whole thing by saying I was just posting to see if other people thought it was. And that's why my uncle is still on the transplant list. He thought you were going to run girls out of there. The late check-in, the cash, bribe, all point to that. He would have asked for payment to look the other way in the room. I very much doubt any violence was on offer. Knowing what somebody looked like before they killed you or beat you senseless doesn't help you much. $100 for a suite? The fuck? I've never had a hotel clerk ask if I wanted to see the room first. It definitely seems sketchy.